Chapter 69. His mind sank into the storage ring and a small space appeared in Lu Ming's mind. The space was about a square meter, about the same size as the storage ring he had obtained from Duanmuju. There were a few boxes scattered in the space. With a wave of his hand, the boxes appeared on the platform of the Temple of Paragon. First, a small box appeared in front of Lu Ming's eyes. The box was lined with gold and looked luxurious. When he opened the box, it turned out to be a book. The flaming astral spear art was a martial technique. Lu Ming couldn't help but recall the spear art Zhu Bing had used. Wasn't it called the flaming astral spear art? The power of the spear art was still fresh in his mind. He opened it expectantly. At one glance, Lu Ming was taken aback. A black-level martial technique. This spear art was a black-level martial technique. A low black-level martial technique, the flaming astral spear art. No wonder it's so powerful. It's a black-level martial technique. I'm rich. Lu Ming was ecstatic. A black-level martial technique was many times more valuable than a yellow-level martial technique. Lu Ming couldn't wait to read it. The more he read, the more shocked he was. What a strong power. Yellow-level martial skills are nothing compared to it. The difference is like heaven and earth. That Zhu Bing is probably only at the first level. Lu Ming muttered to himself. Generally speaking, as long as a low black-level martial technique was cultivated to the first level, its power would be comparable to the sixth level of a superior yellow-level martial technique. If the first level was comparable to the sixth level of a superior yellow-level martial technique, one could imagine how powerful a black-level martial technique was. But at the same time, a black-level martial technique was many times more difficult than a yellow-level martial technique. An ordinary martial master would have a hard time cultivating it. Unless one was a top genius. Zhu Bing had cultivated bitterly for several decades and had barely reached the first level. I wonder how many contribution points it would cost to exchange for a black-level martial technique in the Mystic Yuan Sword Sect's library. It's a pity that it's a spear art. I'm a swordsman, so I can't cultivate it. Lu Ming sighed. Wait. Lu Ming's eyes darkened, then brightened. He whispered, who said that I'm a swordsman? I cultivate the true dragon battle incantation, and what I cultivate is dragon-shaped true energy. My spear is like a dragon. Maybe I've been going in the wrong direction all this time. Lu Ming had always wanted to travel the world with a sword since he was young. However, during this period of time, the flowing light sword art had been stuck at the 5th level, unable to break through to the 6th level man in martial arts as one. Of course, it had to do with one's personality, cultivation technique, and even the bloodline they had awakened. Lu Ming cultivated the true dragon battle art, so his bloodline was a little like a snake's. Wouldn't that make him more compatible with the spear? Lu Ming picked up Zhu Bing's spear and thrust it forward. Whoosh! The spear pierced through the air, making a sharp whistling sound. The moment Lu Ming thrust the spear, the dragon-shaped true chi in his body surged out along the spear. Crackle! A ray of spear light shot out like a dragon, piercing through the air and making crackling sounds. My true chi is smoother now. I'm indeed more suitable for spear practice. Lu Ming sighed. Looks like I'll have to cultivate my spear skills when I go back. But I'll put it aside for now. Let's see what's in the other boxes. Lu Ming put down the spear and looked at the other boxes. 2 of the bigger boxes were filled with jewelry, gold, and silver. The other box, which was slightly smaller, was filled with gold and silver notes. 1 tael of gold was equivalent to 10 taels of silver. With a rough estimate, there were at least 2 million taels of silver in these boxes. This made Lu Ming ecstatic. 2 million taels of silver was equivalent to 20,000 contribution points. How much blood essence could he exchange for? This was not even a profound level martial skill. What about the astral fire spear art? This time he did not come out for nothing. However, this time Lu Ming truly understood what it meant to be dangerous in the pugilistic world. Not only was the competition in the Mystic Essence Sword Sect fierce, it was even more fierce in other places. In order to survive, in order to obtain resources, people would fight endlessly. Even if you were a disciple of a big sect, you could die if you were not careful. Just like this time, Zhu Bing knew that he was a disciple of the Mystic Essence Sword Sect, but still dared to attack him. If he was not careful enough, he would have become Zhu Bing's pawn and died under the poison. Everyone was fighting. If you did not move forward, You would be surpassed by others and become their stepping stone. Lu Ming was not willing to become someone's stepping stone, so he had to work hard. He wanted others to be his stepping stone. After checking, Lu Ming left the Temple of Paragon and continued to move towards the Dark Blood Mountain. A day later, a majestic mountain appeared in front of Lu Ming. The Dark Blood Mountain spanned thousands of miles. It was a very famous mountain in the east of the Blazing Sun Empire, because the entire Dark Blood Mountain was dark red. The earth was dark red, the stones were dark red, and even the plants were dark red as if they were soaked in blood. That was why it was called the Dark Blood Mountain. Legend had it that the Dark Blood Mountain was not originally like this. After an unknown period of time, a peerless expert once fought with someone. Blood spilled and seeped into the mountains and rivers. That was how the Dark Blood Mountain was formed. If this was true, it would be extremely shocking. What kind of existence was this? How could there be so much blood that it dyed the mountains red? Regardless of whether it was true or not, there were indeed some very strange treasures in the Dark Blood Mountain that attracted many people to search for them. For example, the blood flower and the dark blood stone that Lu Ming needed for his mission were one of them. Without any hesitation, Lu Ming rushed into the Dark Blood Mountain. It was indeed very strange. The trees that entered his sight were all dark red. The stones under his feet were also dark red. Lu Ming moved forward, looking around to see if he could find the blood flower. Whoosh! Suddenly, a red light shot towards Lu Ming. Clang! He unsheathed his sword and cut the red light in half. Looking closely, it turned out to be a dark red scorpion. This scorpion was highly poisonous. Lu Ming slowed down and carefully observed his surroundings. A few miles later, roar! Roar! More than a dozen dark red giant wolves surrounded Lu Ming. These were the unique dark blood wolves of the Dark Blood Mountain. They were 1.5 meters tall and 3 meters long. Each of them was a Class 1 LV2 demonic beast. There were even a few Class 2 LV2 demonic beasts. Roar! Roar! Chapter 70. Ultimate Flowing Light. The sword radiance flashed across the sky like lightning, causing blood to spurt out. When the sword radiance faded, more than a dozen dark blood wolves had been killed. Immediately, Lu Ming controlled his bloodline and devoured all the blood essence of the dark blood wolves. The blood essence of the dark blood wolves is rich in life essence. Lu Ming's eyes lit up during the refining process. He found that the blood essence of the dark blood wolves contained twice as much life essence as other beasts of the same level. The blood essence of a Class 1 LV2 dark blood wolf was almost comparable to that of a Class 2 LV2 beast. The blood essence of a Class 2 dark blood wolf was almost comparable to that of a Class 3 LV2 beast. Are all the beasts in the Dark Blood Mountain like this? The life essence in their blood essence is richer than that of the beasts outside? Lu Ming guessed in his heart. Then he continued to move forward. He encountered many beasts along the way, but they were all killed by Lu Ming. Sure enough, regardless of the species of the beasts here, the life essence of the beasts was indeed richer. However, most of them were Class 1 or 2 LV2 beasts. A few of them had reached Class 4 or 5 LV2, which had a limited effect on Lu Ming. In this way, Lu Ming hunted beasts in the Dark Blood Mountain while searching for blood flowers. However, 3 days had passed, and Lu Ming had not found a single blood flower. The efficiency was really low. As for the dark bloodstone that Lu Ming needed the most, there was no trace of it. Lu Ming had no choice but to continue searching. He would treat it as cultivation. In the blink of an eye, another 7 days had passed. In total, Lu Ming had been in the Dark Blood Mountain for 10 days. At this time, Lu Ming finally found a blood flower. After so many days, his cultivation had improved to the late stage of the Martial Master realm, and he was not far from the peak. Hiss! A dark red anaconda was slithering at high speed and Lu Ming was hot on its heels. This giant python was a demonic beast at the peak of Class 6 LV2. It was rare to encounter such a high-level demonic beast in the Dark Blood Mountain. Lu Ming did not want to let it go. However, the python's speed was extremely fast. With a twist of its body, it covered a distance of tens of meters. Even with Lu Ming's dragon snake steps, he was unable to catch up to it. The snake and the man kept running forward. Before he knew it, He had already traveled several dozen li and arrived at a dense forest. At this time, the giant python gradually slowed down. "Let's see where you can run to now." Lu Ming smiled, and the sword light slashed towards the giant python. Hiss! The giant python hissed and spat out wisps of poisonous gas at Lu Ming. Lu Ming's figure flashed and dodged the attack. Then he took a step forward and rushed towards the giant python. The sword light flashed and left a long wound on the giant python's body. Fresh blood flowed out. However, at this moment, Lu Ming's expression changed. He felt a burning pain on his skin, as if it was being corroded by something. What happened? Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. I clearly dodged the giant python's poisonous gas. How did this happen? Lu Ming's eyes were like lightning as he scanned his surroundings. At this moment he realized that there was a faint dark red blood qi in the air. If one didn't pay attention, they wouldn't be able to see it. Could it be that this blood qi is poisonous? Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He immediately circulated his true qi and covered his entire body to resist the blood qi. Hiss! When the blood qi collided with the true qi, it actually made a sizzling sound, as if it was corroding the true qi. What a powerful poison qi! At this moment, the giant python was dragging its injured body and swimming forward. Lu Ming went over and cut off the giant python's head. Then, with a thought, the blood qi that looked like a small snake appeared. It opened its mouth and sucked. 9 drops of blood essence flew out from the giant python's body and were swallowed by the small snake. However, it wasn't over yet. The small snake continued to suck. The red blood qi beside Lu Ming was directly sucked into the small snake's mouth. Then there was a sizzling sound, as if the blood qi was being refined. Lu Ming was dumbfounded. How could this work? But this way, there was no more blood qi around Lu Ming's body. The feeling of corrosion on his skin also disappeared without a trace. This is good too. I can take a look at what this place is. A smile appeared on Lu Ming's face. He continued to move forward. The more he moved forward, the denser the red blood qi became. However, the small snake kept absorbing. There was always a vacuum around Lu Ming's body, and the blood qi couldn't enter. This blood qi was swallowed and refined by the spirit-devouring bloodline, and it would also be transformed into wisps of energy. However, this energy wasn't very strong and wasn't very useful for improving one's cultivation. After moving forward for a few thousand meters, a faint smell of blood came. Lu Ming's face changed slightly. After moving forward for another 100 meters, a pool appeared in front of Lu Ming. This pool wasn't big, only 10 meters in length and width. However, there wasn't water in the pool, but a dark red liquid. The pool was filled with a dark red liquid that looked like fresh blood. The faint smell of blood was obviously coming from the pool. The smell of blood in the air was also emitted from the pool. There were small red flowers growing on the edge of the pool. Looking at these small flowers, Lu Ming was ecstatic. Blood-lingering flowers, these are all blood-lingering flowers. Ha ha ha, it's really easy to find them by chance. Lu Ming laughed. Then Lu Ming walked to the edge of the pool and carefully picked the flowers. The liquid in the pool was obviously poisonous. Lu Ming didn't want to touch it. Half an hour later, all the blood-lingering flowers were picked by Lu Ming. There were a total of 54 flowers. Including the one he found earlier, there were 55 flowers. This was a big harvest. One flower was 100 contribution points. 55 flowers would be 5,500 contribution points. After picking, Lu Ming looked at the liquid in the pool again. Although the liquid was poisonous, it obviously contained powerful energy essence. Otherwise, it couldn't have nurtured so many blood-lingering flowers. Can the spirit-devouring bloodline devour and refine this liquid? Lu Ming pondered. Let's try devouring a drop first. Lu Ming's eyes hardened. If he wanted to quickly improve his cultivation and embark on the path of martial arts experts, it was impossible to not take some risks. Then Lu Ming ran his true qi and scooped up a drop of the red liquid. He then controlled his bloodline to devour this drop of liquid. Sizzle! Lu Ming seemed to be able to feel a sizzling sound in his bloodline. Then, a surge of energy entered Lu Ming's body. It really works. Lu Ming was overjoyed. Then Lu Ming sat cross-legged beside the pool and controlled the spirit-devouring bloodline to devour and refine the liquid. Of course, Lu Ming didn't dare to devour too much at once. Instead, he devoured it in wisps. Indeed, the spirit-devouring bloodline devoured and refined this liquid much slower than the blood essence of demonic beasts. However, it was still many times faster than directly absorbing the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Lu Ming's cultivation began to rise rapidly again. Half a day later, Lu Ming reached the peak of the 5th level of the Martial Master realm. 3 days later, Lu Ming broke through and reached the 6th level of the Martial Master realm. But it wasn't over yet. Lu Ming continued to cultivate. This cultivation lasted for more than 20 days. In total, Lu Ming had cultivated here for a month. Chapter 71. In just over a month, Lu Ming's cultivation had increased by 2 levels. This speed was extremely shocking. The liquid here might be poisonous to others, but to me it's a treasure. Unfortunately, this is something that can only be found by chance. Lu Ming thought to himself. Then he opened his mouth and spat out a column of air. It was like a sharp sword that shot out a few meters away. 7th grade martial master is indeed powerful. It's much stronger than a 5th grade martial master. Now I can fight with Ningfeng in one move. Feeling the dragon-shaped qi surging in his body, Lu Ming was overjoyed. Rustle at this moment, a rustling sound was heard. The sound came from the pit. When Lin Fan looked over, he saw a dark red worm crawling in the pit. This worm was thicker than a thumb and more than a foot long. Its body was crystal clear like blood jade, and it had a mouthful of sharp fangs. When it saw Lu Ming, it seemed to be shocked. It twisted its body and quickly shot into the distance. This is a blood breath worm. Lu Ming was stunned for a moment before he was overjoyed. According to the records, the blood breath worm was accompanied by dark bloodstones. This meant that there would definitely be dark bloodstones where the blood breath worm lived. He did not expect that there would be a blood breath worm in this pond. Without hesitation, Lu Ming rushed over and followed closely behind the blood breath worm. When the blood breath worm saw Lu Ming chasing after it, it twisted its body even faster and rushed forward. You want to leave? It's not that easy. Lu Ming smiled faintly and strode forward, following closely behind the blood breath bugs. After about 1,000 meters, the blood breath worm suddenly drilled into the ground and disappeared. Oh no, the blood breath worm can drill into the ground. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. He rushed over, but the blood breath worm had already disappeared. Swish! Lu Ming leaped onto a big tree and scanned the surroundings. Indeed, not long after, the blood breath worm drilled out of the ground 100 meters away and rushed forward. I can't get too close. That will only disturb it and prevent it from running back to its resting place. At that moment, Lu Ming's figure flashed and he leaped onto another big tree. Just like that, he leaped on the tree trunk, restrained his aura, and followed closely behind the blood breath worm. They crossed over mountains and valleys and traveled for dozens of miles. At this moment, the blood breath bug stopped again. It drilled into the ground and disappeared. Could it be here? Lu Ming pondered for a moment. He wasn't in a hurry to rush out. Instead, he began to observe. After a while, there was still no movement. Lu Ming was certain that the habitat of the blood breath worm should be here. Lu Ming moved to the place where the blood breath bugs had disappeared. Looks like it's here. The dark bloodstone should be below. Then, he took out the black-edged sword that he used before and used it as a shovel to dig. With Lu Ming's cultivation and the sharpness of the obsidian sword, the speed at which he dug out the rocks was extremely fast. Soon he dug out a deep pit that was a few meters deep. At this moment, a red light shot out with a swoosh. It was the blood breath bug. After the blood breath bug rushed out, it didn't stop and ran away. Lu Ming ignored it and continued to dig. Soon a faint fragrance wafted out. It smelled like sandalwood. Lu Ming perked up. According to the records, although the dark bloodstone was called the dark bloodstone, it didn't have the smell of blood. Instead, it had the smell of sandalwood. With this smell, it meant that there must be a dark bloodstone here. Lu Ming dug even harder. As a rock was dug out, a thick fragrance wafted out. Below, a fist-sized stone that was covered with blood-colored lines appeared before Lu Ming's eyes. It was the dark bloodstone. Lu Ming was overjoyed. He took out the dark bloodstone and looked at it carefully. This was required for the 3rd or even the 4th level of the true dragon of battle art. After looking at it, he kept it in the temple of Paragon. But in the next moment, Lu Ming's expression changed. This was because there was a sandalwood fragrance wafting out from below. Is there another dark bloodstone? Lu Ming was overjoyed. He quickly dug with all his might. Sure enough, he didn't dig too deep before he found another dark bloodstone. It was still the size of a fist and emitted a strong sandalwood fragrance. Ha ha ha, I'm so lucky. Lu Ming was overjoyed. He took out the dark bloodstone. But there was still a sandalwood fragrance wafting out from below. There's more? This time even Lu Ming was a little stunned. At this moment, Lu Ming's expression changed. He heard the sound of something breaking through the air. There's a sandalwood fragrance. It's the dark bloodstone. Hurry up. There was a commotion. Then 5 to 6 figures appeared. Swoosh, swoosh. In the forest, 6 figures suddenly appeared and surrounded Lu Ming. They didn't hide their auras at all. They burst out and shrouded Lu Ming. 4 of them were level 7 martial masters and 2 were at the peak of level 6 martial masters. There were men and women among the 6, but they were all very young. They were about 18 or 19 years old. At this moment, the 6 of them were looking at the big hole that Lu Ming had dug. There is indeed a dark bloodstone. Kid, you can get lost now. The dark bloodstone here belongs to us. A hook-nosed young man looked at Lu Ming and said coldly, Everyone, I found this place first. Lu Ming smiled faintly. So what if you found it first? It belongs to us now. The hook-nosed young man sneered. He was extremely arrogant. So you want to rob me? Let's see if you have the ability to do so. Lu Ming smiled faintly, looking calm and collected. Kid, you are courting death. The hook-nosed young man shouted coldly. Then he clawed at Lu Ming. 5 sharp claw radiances pierced Lu Ming's chest. Boom! Lu Ming threw a punch. Bam! Crack! There was a loud bang followed by a cracking sound. Then, the hook-nosed young man screamed miserably and retreated a dozen steps. One of his hands was trembling non-stop and blood kept flowing out. His 5 fingers had been broken by Lu Ming's punch. Brat, how dare you? Do you know who we are? We are disciples of the Black Essence Sword Sect's Azure Dragon Hall. How dare you injure me? You are dead. Ah, my hand. The hook-nosed young man screamed and roared. Disciples of the Azure Dragon Hall? No wonder your cultivation is not weak at such a young age. Lu Ming's expression changed. I remember now. You are Lu Ming, this year's newcomer King Lu Ming. I saw you from afar at the end of the previous trial. Suddenly, a female disciple shouted. What? He is Lu Ming? The others could not help but exclaim. I didn't expect you to recognize me. Lu Ming touched his nose and smiled faintly. Lu Ming, although you are the newcomer king, let me give you a piece of advice. Quickly get out of the way and leave. We can pretend that nothing happened today. This is because senior brother Yao Tianyu needs the dark bloodstone. We are also under senior brother Yao Tianyu's orders to look for the dark bloodstone. The woman's tone was filled with confidence. Chapter 72. Who would have known that Lu Ming's next sentence almost caused her to suffer internal injuries? Who is Yao Tianyu? What does it have to do with me that he needs the dark bloodstone? Now get lost. I'll let you go since we're both from the Mystic Essence Sword Sect. Lu Ming waved his hand impatiently. How dare you? Senior brother Yao Tianyu is a genius on the bronze list. He's the leader of all the bronze disciples. Are you tired of living? The young lady shouted angrily, her face flushed red. So you're on the bronze list. No wonder you're so arrogant. Lu Ming was slightly stunned. The bronze list was a list of the Mystic Essence Sword Sect's 4 great halls. Those who could be on the list were the top geniuses among the bronze disciples. Each one of them was terrifyingly strong. They stood at the peak of the bronze disciples. But what did it have to do with Lu Ming? Who cares if she's a bronze list disciple? Does that mean she can snatch my dark bloodstone? When the lady saw Lu Ming in a daze, she thought that Lu Ming was scared after hearing about the bronze list. She sneered and said, Lu Ming, hand over the dark bloodstone now and follow us to kowtow to senior brother Yao Tianyu. Perhaps senior brother Yao Tianyu will let bygones be bygones. Hand over the dark bloodstone? Kowtow to apologize? Lu Ming looked at the lady strangely as if he was looking at an idiot. He then said, You're all bronze disciples of the Mystic Essence Sword Sect. Is there something wrong with your brains? The young lady was stunned and only reacted after a while. She was trembling with anger and shrieked, "Lu Ming, what did you say? You're courting death. Why are you talking nonsense with him? Let's attack together and cripple him. We'll bring him to senior brother Yao Tianyu and let him deal with him." The hook-nosed youth shouted with a sinister face. "Attack!" The 6 of them attacked at the same time towards Lu Ming. Sword chi, saber light, claw energy, palm wind instantly covered Lu Ming's body. "You're courting death." Lu Ming's eyes darkened, and with a movement of his hand, the heavenly star sword appeared in his hand. Sword light flashed, and he instantly slashed out over 10 times. "Ah! Ah!" 6 blood-curdling screams were heard as the 6 youths from the Azure Dragon Institute quickly retreated. The 6 of them retreated more than 10 steps before they could regain their footing. On each of their chests, there was a deep sword wound that was bleeding profusely. He had injured 6 people with a single strike. How can he be so strong? How could this be? More than a month ago, I heard that he defeated Ningfeng, but it was only a difficult victory. It has only been a month, how can he be so strong? The 6 young men's faces were deathly pale, without a trace of blood. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. "Go! Let's go! This person is undefeatable!" That woman screamed, quickly backing up, almost scared out of her wits. Whoosh! Whoosh! The other 5 people didn't dare to stay any longer and ran for their lives. Lu Ming's eyes flickered a few times, but he didn't pursue. The 6 of them had scattered and fled. He did not have the confidence to capture all of them. After that, Lu Ming continued to dig. Next, Lu Ming dug out 2 more dark bloodstones. There were a total of 4 dark bloodstones in this place. "It's enough." Lu Ming laughed. After checking that there were no more dark bloodstones, Lu Ming turned around and left. Blood-lingering flower and dark bloodstone have been found. It's time to return to the sect. Lu Ming smiled. Although there were some twists and turns on this trip, everything went smoothly. His figure didn't stop as he headed out of the Dark Blood Mountain. On the way, he encountered a lone dark blood wolf. He tamed it and used it as a mount. The green scale horse had been left outside for so long. He didn't know where it had run off to. This dark blood wolf was a Class 2 2nd LV. It was extremely strong and powerful. It was not comparable to the green scale horse. Crossing over the mountains was like walking on flat ground. Soon, he was out of the Dark Blood Mountain and headed in the direction of the Mystic Essence Sword sect. In the depths of the Dark Blood Mountain, a figure was sitting cross-legged on a large rock on a mountain peak. This figure appeared to be around 17 years old. He had a handsome appearance and a stern expression. Just by sitting there casually, he emitted a sharp aura. On the side, there were a dozen young men standing there, not daring to breathe. These young men included the 6 young men from before. "Senior brother Yao, this is what happened," the hook-nosed young man reported. This cold young man was the genius on the bronze list, Yao Tianyu. In the martial world, the strong came first. Although Yao Tianyu was young, the others still respectfully called him senior brother. Yao Tianyu frowned slightly and said, "You mean there might be more than one dark bloodstone, and all of them are in the hands of that Lu Ming?" "That's right, senior brother Yao. That Lu Ming is extremely arrogant. Not only did he injure us, but he also didn't give you any face. We said your name, but Lu Ming said, 'Who is Yao Tianyu?'" The hook-nosed young man hurriedly replied. Of course, there was a lot of exaggeration. The other 5 people's eyes flashed, but they didn't refute the hook-nosed young man. He. After Yao Tianyu heard, he let out a cold smile and said, "Are all the newcomers now so arrogant? Lu Ming, newcomer king, dare to be arrogant in front of me? Wait a few years." Then, his gaze swept across the crowd and said, "Go find Lu Ming for me. As long as he's still in the Dark Blood Mountain, I won't let him return to the Vermilion Bird Courtyard." "Yes," the young men responded loudly. Then their figures flickered and they went down the mountain peak, disappearing into the forest of the Dark Blood Mountain. "Lu Ming," Yao Tianyu whispered as killing intent flashed in his eyes. The dark blood wolf was as fast as lightning, and its speed was much faster than the green scale horse. In less than 7 days, Lu Ming came to Yukong City again. When he passed by the Zhu family, he found that the Zhu family was already empty. Even the door was covered with spider webs. It seemed that the Zhou family had been destroyed by the Zhou family. The divine wilderness continent was like this. Strength was respected. Every day was filled with slaughter. Who knew how many forces were destroyed every day? Lu Ming shook his head and found a restaurant. He ordered some dishes and wine and started eating. Unknowingly, his thoughts drifted to Firestorm City. Yukong City is not far from Firestorm City. It's only a 3-day journey. I don't need 3 days to ride the dark blood wolf. Why don't I go back and see my mother? Lu Ming thought. It had been almost 4 months since he came out. It was time to go back and see. After hurriedly finishing his meal, he went down the restaurant and headed towards Firestorm City. In just a little more than 2 days, he arrived at Firestorm City. Roar! Walking on the streets of Firestorm City, the dark blood wolf let out a long roar, scaring everyone on the street. What a terrifying demon beast, let's go! Go and ask the experts of the Lu family to suppress it. The demon beast has entered the city. Eh? No, look, isn't that the young master of the Lu family, Lu Ming? It's him, it's really him. There was an uproar nearby. The others distanced themselves from Lu Ming, afraid that they would be bitten to death by the dark blood wolf. Bang! Lu Ming slapped the neck of the dark blood wolf, almost slapping it down. What are you shouting for? Behave yourself. Lu Ming scolded. Woo woo. The dark blood wolf barked like a domestic dog. It was very obedient. Chapter 73. The dark blood wolf followed behind Lu Ming like a puppy. Soon they arrived at the Lu family mansion. Who's there? Stop. Ah, it's the young master, it's the young master. The guard in front of the Lu clan's residence shouted. However, he immediately reacted and shouted, "The young master is back. Please come in." The guard hurriedly said. Lu Ming smiled and nodded. He walked into the Lu family mansion with the dark blood wolf. Greetings, young master. The young master is back. The young master is back. After entering the Lu family mansion, the Lu family members greeted Lu Ming respectfully when they saw him. Then the news quickly spread throughout the Lu family. The young master is so powerful. He has such a powerful beast with him. Yeah, I feel that this beast is scarier than many of the elders. It is so obedient in front of the young master. That's for sure. The young master is a disciple of the Mystic Essence Sword sect. Some of the Lu family servants looked at Lu Ming from afar, especially the dark blood wolf. They were talking about it with respect. Lu Ming smiled bitterly and touched his nose. He just caught a dark blood wolf for transportation. He did not expect it to cause such a stir. Soon Lu Ming arrived at the main family mansion. At the entrance of the main family mansion, Li Ping was already waiting. Apparently, she had heard the news. Ming. At the sight of Lu Ming, Li Ping revealed a happy smile. Mother, I'm back to see you, Lu Ming said affectionately. He then patted the dark blood wolf's neck and said, Lie down at the entrance and don't move. Otherwise, I'll kill you to go with my wine. Woo! The dark blood wolf cried out pitifully and lay down on the ground obediently. Li Ping and the maidservants behind her were dumbfounded by what they saw. Mother, let's talk inside, Lu Ming said. Okay, Li Ping said. In the courtyard of the main family mansion, there was a stone table. Li Ping's maids had already prepared snacks and tea. Minger, how have you been? Li Ping asked with concern. Looking at Li Ping's concerned eyes, Lu Ming felt warm in his heart. Don't worry, I'm fine. Don't you think I've gotten stronger? After saying that, he even waved his arm. Look at how proud you are. Then she changed the topic and asked, Minger, what about Mid-Autumn Moon? Didn't they come back together? Lu Ming smiled and said, Mother, Autumn Moon is fine. She is now a genius disciple of the Mystic Essence Sword sect. Lu Ming briefly recounted what had happened to them during this period of time. Of course, Lu Ming skipped over everything that involved danger, lest Li Ping worry. I didn't expect Autumn Moon to be so talented. I'm really happy for her. Hearing that Autumn Moon had joined the most mysterious and powerful Qilin courtyard of the Mystic Essence Sword sect, Li Ping was also very happy. Autumn Moon had been with her for many years. She treated Autumn Moon like her own daughter. Now that Autumn Moon had made a name for herself, she was naturally happy. The mother and son chatted one after another. Roar! Suddenly a loud roar came from outside the door. It was the roar of the dark blood wolf. "Young master, it's us." Then an old voice was heard. "Core elders of the elders' courtyard." Lu Ming's expression changed. He quickly got up and walked out of the door. At this moment the dark blood wolf stood at the door. Its red fur stood up as it stared at the 5 old men. These 5 old men were the core elders of the elders' courtyard. "What are you doing? Lie down." Lu Ming slapped the dark blood wolf again. The dark blood wolf whimpered and lay down on the ground obediently. "Young master, is this your battle beast? So powerful." "I'm afraid it's a class 2 second LV, a core elder said. He looked at the dark blood wolf with fear in his eyes. A class 2 second LV was equivalent to a LV2 martial master. In the Lu family, most of the elders were only at LV1 martial master. Only a small number of elders and the core elders of the elders' courtyard were above LV2 martial master. This dark blood wolf could be considered a top expert in the Lu family. Young master actually had such a demonic beast as a battle beast? Amazing. The core elders thought in their hearts. "Oh, this dark blood wolf? It's not my battle beast. Caught it on the way. It's not bad. It's faster than the Cyan scale horse." Lu Ming said casually. "Ah, what? You caught it on the way?" The 5 core elders were stunned. Then they exchanged glances with one another, somewhat doubtful of what Lin Fan had said. "Elders, why are you looking for Lu Ming? Is anything the matter?" Lu Ming asked. "It's nothing. Young master hasn't returned for a long time, so we came to see him." The 5 core elders looked at each other and one of them said. Lu Ming frowned slightly. He felt that the 5 core elders were hiding something from him. Elders, something bad has happened." At this moment, a burly man rushed over and shouted anxiously. The 5 core elders' faces suddenly changed. They asked in unison what happened. The middle-aged burly man looked at the 5 core elders, then looked at Lu Ming and said, "The Sand Snake Bandits and Dry Bone Bandits are attacking again. This time they are attacking the refined iron ore in the south. The refined iron ore is now surrounded." "What? They are attacking the refined iron ore? Damn it!" One of the core elders roared. The other core elders looked worried as well. "Elders, what's going on?" Lu Ming asked. "Young master, it's like this." One of the core elders immediately explained. The Demon Beast mountain range stretched for thousands of miles across several cities. There were many bandits active in the Demon Beast mountain range. The Sand Snake Bandits were near Firestorm City. As for the Dry Bone Bandits, they were active in another big city. They were much stronger than the Sand Snake Bandits. About half a month ago, the Sand Snake Bandits and Dry Bone Bandits suddenly colluded and started attacking some of the Lu family's mines and caravans. The Lu family naturally organized experts to surround and suppress them. However, there were many experts among the Dry Bone Bandits. The leader of the Dry Bone Bandits was a Martial Master Realm Level 5 expert. A few days ago, the Lu family's core elders were mobilized. However, the strongest core elder of the Lu family, a Martial Master Realm Level 4 expert, was injured by the leader of the Dry Bone Bandits. He couldn't even get out of bed now. Sand Snake Bandits and Dry Bone Bandits? Lu Ming's eyes flashed with murderous intent. He was familiar with the Sand Snake Bandits. His first startup capital was stolen from the Sand Snake Bandits' lair. How audacious! How dare they attack my Lu clan? Let's go. I'll go destroy them. Lu Ming said coldly. Young master, don't act rashly. The leader of the Dry Bone Bandits is a Martial Master Realm Level 5 expert. I know that young master is talented. However, you have just joined the Mystic Essence Sword sect. We can only defend first. After all, the Sand Snake Bandits and Dry Bone Bandits are few in number. It's impossible for them to break through. Hearing that Lu Ming was going to kill them, the 5 core elders' faces changed and they hurriedly advised him. That's right. Ming'er, don't act rashly. Chapter 74. Mother, 5 elders, don't worry. It's just 2 groups of bandits. I can wipe them out with a flip of my hand. You don't have to worry. Just send someone to lead the way. Lu Ming smiled confidently. Alright, but we have to go together. One of the core elders said. Lu Ming smiled. He knew that the core elders were worried about his safety, so he didn't reject them. Ming-er, you must be careful, Li Ping said worriedly. Mother, don't worry. I'll be back soon. Lu Ming smiled confidently at Li Ping. Seeing Lu Ming's confident smile, Li Ping's worry lessened a little. Not long after, the Lu family gathered their men and headed towards the refined iron mine in the southern part of the Beast Mountain range under the lead of the core elders. The refined iron mine was the main source of income for the Lu family. Of course, there were also many troops stationed there. In the past, a lone viper bandit would never have dared to attack the refined iron mine. But it was different now with the dried bone bandits. Rumble. The sound of horses galloping could be heard. The Lu family had mobilized hundreds of men, stirring up a cloud of dust. A huge mountain appeared in front of them. In front of the mountain, there were 300 to 400 men surrounding the entrance. 2 flags were raised high. One had a snake on it while the other had a skull on it. Ha ha ha, the Lu family has indeed sent reinforcements. Among the bandits there was a loud laugh. A strong man riding a tall green scale horse blocked in front of them. Viper bandits, dried bone bandits. How dare you attack the Lu family? You're courting death. Lu Ming rode on the dark blood wolf and took the lead, shouting coldly. Young master, don't be careless. This man is the second leader of the dried bone bandits. His cultivation has reached the 4th grade martial master. A core elder hurriedly reminded him. When the burly man saw Lu Ming, he was stunned. Then he turned to the dark blood wolf under Lu Ming. His eyes narrowed. Then a fiery light flashed. Haha, it seems like there's really no one left in the Lu clan. After beating up the old one, now there's a brat who's still wet behind the ears. Are they all here to die? The second leader of the withered bone bandits sneered and continued. You said that your mount isn't bad. Quickly hand it over and I'll give you a quick death. Give me a quick death? Lu Ming sneered as he controlled the dark blood wolf and walked forward step by step. How ignorant. I'm ignorant? Don't think that you can scare me just because you have a powerful demonic beast as a mount. Let's see how I kill you. Go. The second leader of the dry bone bandits roared. He controlled the green scale horse and rushed toward Lu Ming like a gust of wind. The warblade in his hand was like a gust of wind as it slashed toward Lu Ming. Lu Ming sat motionless on the dark blood wolf as if he was frightened. Young master, be careful. The 5 core elders were shocked and shouted one after another. Haha, die. The second leader of the dry bone bandits sneered as murderous intent flashed in his eyes. However, the next moment, the smile on his face disappeared because he saw a sword light that seemed to be faster than lightning slashing toward him. He had no time to dodge at all. He couldn't even react in time, let alone dodge. Then he felt a chill on his neck. The next moment, he saw a headless corpse galloping forward on the green scale horse. Then he was plunged into endless darkness. One/. Behind him, the 5 core elders of the Lu clan and the rest of the Lu clan were all stunned. The second leader of the dry bone bandits was a 4th grade martial master expert. In their eyes, he was an unreachable existence. However, he was killed by Lu Ming with 1/. It had only been a few months and the young master's cultivation had already reached such a level? That thought appeared in the minds of the Lu clan members. Then their hearts burned with excitement and their eyes were full of anticipation. Lu Ming was already so powerful in such a short period of time. What level could Lu Ming reach in a few years or even decades? They could almost see the rapid rise of the Lu clan. The second leader is dead. The second leader is dead. The dry bone bandits cried out in alarm. Who is it? How dare you kill my second brother? A loud roar came from the withered bone bandits. A burly man riding a leopard rushed out of the crowd with a thunderous roar. Young master, he's the leader of the dry bone bandits. One of the core elders said. Just kill him. Following Lu Ming's cold voice, he dashed out from the dark blood wolf, traversed more than 20 meters, and landed on the ground. He then stomped heavily on the ground. With a bang, the ground shook and Lu Ming's body shot out like a cannonball. In an instant, he was in front of the leader of the dry bone bandits. How can he be so fast? The leader of the dry bone bandits was shocked. Lu Ming was so fast that he was shocked. Die! The leader of the dry bone bandits roared and slashed with all his might, trying to force Lu Ming to retreat. However, he was in despair the next moment. Whoosh! Lu Ming's sword light was so fast that he couldn't dodge it in time. Poochie! A head flew high and landed in the middle of the dry bone bandits. The entire place fell into silence. Kill! Lu Ming's roar woke everyone up. Kill! Kill! Follow the young master and kill all the bandits. Let's charge together. The 5 core elders roared with all their might. Their faces were flushed with excitement as they rode on their green scale horses and charged towards the sand snake bandits and dry bone bandits. Kill! Follow the young master and kill all the bandits. The rest of the Lu family roared. Hundreds of people roared together and their morale was high. On the other hand, the dry bone bandits were scared out of their wits after being killed by Lu Ming. They didn't have the courage to resist and retreated. It was chaos. At this moment, a group of people rushed out of the Lu family's refined iron mine, causing the 2 groups of bandits to be even more chaotic. Lu Ming charged into the bandits. His sword light flashed and rows of bandits were killed. These bandits' hands were all stained with blood and deserved to die. Lu Ming didn't show any mercy. The bandits couldn't resist at all in his hands. He reaped their lives to his heart's content. Wherever Lu Ming passed, a large number of corpses would fall. It was a one-sided battle and the bandits couldn't resist at all. Soon the area was filled with corpses. 300 to 400 bandits were slaughtered. Ha ha ha, the sand snake bandits and dry bone bandits have been annihilated. Long live the young master. The young master is invincible. Long live the young master. The Lu family members let out thunderous cheers. After a long while it gradually calmed down. After that, a group of people was left to clean up the battlefield. The 5 core elders led a group of people and returned to the Lu family with Lu Ming. As for the news of this battle, it quickly spread throughout the entire Firestorm City. Countless people were shocked by this news. The first leader of the Dry Bone Bandits and the second leader of the Dry Bone Bandits, who were 5th stage martial masters, weren't a match for Lu Ming and were easily killed by Lu Ming. It was too shocking. The happiest person was Li Ping. The stronger Lu Ming was, the happier she was. After that, the Lu family held a grand banquet. The famous people of Firestorm City came to congratulate them. Chapter 75. In the blink of an eye, Lu Ming had been in the Lu clan for 7 days. In these 7 days, apart from cultivating, Lu Ming spent his time chatting with Li Ping. There were several times when he almost told Li Ping that he might still be alive, but he held himself back in the end. After 7 days, Lu Ming bid farewell to Li Ping and rode the Dark Blood Wolf towards the Mystic Essence Sword Sect. After 5 days, the Mystic Essence Sword Sect was already in sight. Go. Since you've carried me for so long, I'll set you free. Lu Ming patted the Dark Blood Wolf's neck. Woo! The Dark Blood Wolf howled excitedly and ran away, as if it was afraid that Lu Ming would go back on his word. In the blink of an eye, it disappeared into the forest. Lu Ming smiled and walked towards the Mystic Essence Sword Sect. Not long after, Lu Ming returned to the Mystic Essence Sword Sect. However, he didn't return to his dorm first. Instead, he went to the mission hall. He would turn in the mission first. He walked into the mission hall and came to a counter. Junior brother, are you here to accept or turn in the mission? A rather beautiful young lady at the counter asked. Turn in the mission. Lu Ming handed a mission card to the young lady. It was the Bloodflower mission. As for the escort mission from the Zhu clan, since the Zhu clan was already destroyed, there was no need to turn it in. Bloodflower mission? May I know how many bloodflowers Junior brother has collected? The young lady asked. She knew that this mission wasn't easy to complete. Bloodflowers weren't easy to collect. Not only did they have to go to the Dark Blood Mountain, but each flower only cost 100 contribution points. The return trip was too long, so it wasn't worth it. Therefore, not many people accepted the mission. She was curious about how many Lu Ming had collected. Senior sister, please count them. Lu Ming waved his hand, and a large pile of blood flowers appeared on the counter. So many. The young lady looked at the blood flowers on the counter and was stunned. Her rosy lips were wide open. She never expected Lu Ming to be able to collect so many blood-lingering flowers. This pile of blood-lingering flowers also attracted the attention of a large number of people nearby. So many blood-lingering flowers. Who is this person? You don't even know this year's newcomer king? So it's him. His luck is really good. He actually managed to find so many blood-lingering flowers. My luck is indeed pretty good. Envious voices could be heard from the surroundings. Can you help me count them? Lu Ming waved his hand in front of the young woman's eyes and asked. Okay. Only then did the young woman react. She hurriedly helped Lu Ming count the items. A total of 55 blood-lingering flowers. Each flower costs 100 contribution points, so that's a total of 5,500 contribution points. The young woman said with envy in her eyes. She didn't know how long it would take her to earn 5,500 contribution points. Lu Ming nodded and handed the identity jade token to the young woman. A moment later, 5,500 contribution points were added to Lu Ming's identity jade token. After handing in the mission, Lu Ming did not stay and went straight to the dormitory. Lu Ming did not notice that outside the mission hall, 2 young men had been watching Lu Ming leave. Lu Ming is back. Let's hurry back and report to senior brother Yao Tianyu. Let's go. A moment later, Lu Ming returned to the dormitory. He realized that Pang Shi and Hua Qi were not there. Lu Ming guessed that Pang Shi and Hua Qi were most likely cultivating elsewhere or doing missions. Without thinking too much, Lu Ming walked into the room, sat down cross-legged, and began cultivating the true dragon battle art. After these days of cultivation, Lu Ming's cultivation had already been completely consolidated. He was now working hard to advance to the mid-7th level martial master. After 3 hours, Lu Ming finally ended his cultivation. Bam! At this moment, a heavy crash came from the courtyard's door. Seemed to have been kicked open. It's not Pang Shi and Hua Qi. Lu Ming's heart skipped a beat. If it was Pang Shi and Hua Qi, they wouldn't have kicked the door open like this. Lu Ming got up and walked out of the room. He saw 2 young men walking in from outside. Lu Ming, you're here. Just in time. A young man in a red robe saw Lu Ming and smiled coldly. Who are you? Lu Ming narrowed his eyes. We're disciples of the Azure Dragon Hall. Senior brother Yao Tianyu summons you. Hurry up and bring the dark bloodstone to the Azure Dragon Hall to meet senior brother Yao Tianyu. The red-robed young man said coldly. His tone was filled with arrogance and a commanding tone. Yao Tianyu? Lu Ming raised his eyebrows. He immediately remembered. Wasn't it the Yao Tianyu on the bronze list that the Azure Dragon Hall disciples mentioned on the Dark Blood Mountain? He was really in a hurry. Lu Ming had just returned and he was already looking for him. And it was a summons? Asking him to meet him? Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile as he replied. I'm not free. What? Not free. Senior brother Yao Tianyu summons you. Even if you have something important to do, you have to put it down. Hurry up and bring the dark bloodstone with you. The red-robed young man scolded. He still had an arrogant expression on his face. What bullshit, Yao Tianyu? I've already told you that I'm not free. Hurry up and get lost. Lu Ming's face darkened as he said coldly. What? You're courting death, you. Get lost. The young man in the red robe was about to say something when Lu Ming roared furiously. His figure dashed out and both his fists blasted out. Bang! Bang! The 2 young men were also 7th layer martial masters, but they were no match for Lu Ming. They were sent flying out of the door and fell heavily on the ground. Lu Ming looked down at the 2 of them and said coldly, I've already said, get lost. If you don't get lost, I don't mind throwing the 2 of you off the Vermilion Bird Peak. Lu Ming, don't be arrogant. Just you wait. If you offend senior brother Yao Tianyu, you won't have a good ending. The red-robed youth shouted loudly. Then, he and the other person fled in a sorry state. Bronze list? Lu Ming's eyes flashed. He didn't know much about the bronze list, but he knew that anyone who could be on the bronze list was a super genius. The highest cultivation of a bronze disciple was the 9th layer martial master. Once they broke through to the martial grandmaster realm, they would be promoted to a silver disciple as long as they weren't too old. And the geniuses on the bronze list were all at the peak of the 9th layer martial master realm. And they weren't ordinary peak 9th layer martial masters, because they were all geniuses with incomparably powerful combat strength. It was said that ordinary peak 9th layer martial masters couldn't even last one move in the hands of the geniuses on the bronze list. The geniuses on the bronze list were all invincible existences of the same level. They could even fight across levels. For the current Lu Ming, they were indeed invincible. Lu Ming returned to his room and pondered. Right now, my martial skills are too weak. I have to cultivate the flaming astral spear art as soon as possible. But before that, I need to cultivate the basic spear arts. Lu Ming pondered. No matter what weapon he cultivated, he needed a foundation. Lu Ming had never cultivated a spear art before. Without a foundation, it was impossible for him to cultivate a low-grade profound rank spear art right away. Chapter 76. There were 6 basic ways to use the spear, and they were called the 6-word spear formula. Collapse, push, press, cover, flick, and stab. Only by mastering these 6 basic methods would one be able to practice more profound spear arts. Lu Ming immediately picked up Zhu Bing's long spear in the Temple of Paragon and began to cultivate. Swoosh! The spear turned into a flash and stabbed forward. With a sweep, the spear turned into the shadow of the moon and swept out. Just like that, Lu Ming practiced the 6-word foundation spear formula again and again. Azure Dragon Courtyard. In a very spacious and luxurious courtyard, Yao Tianyu sat in the living room with a few people reporting to him. 2 of them were the ones who had gone to summon Lu Ming. Senior brother Yao, that Lu Ming is too arrogant. He doesn't take senior brother Yao seriously at all. The red-robed young man said. Lu Ming, do you really think you're a big shot? How dare you ignore me? I'll make you regret it. Yao Tianyu's eyes were cold. Senior brother Yao, this Lu Ming is a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard. If he keeps hiding in the Vermilion Bird Courtyard, it won't be easy to deal with him. Another young man frowned. Then do you have any ideas? Yao Tianyu asked. At this moment, a smarter young man rolled his eyes and said, Senior brother Yao, I have an idea that can force Lu Ming out and make him attack first. Then we can take down Lu Ming legitimately. Then, he told Yao Tianyu his plan. Good, ha ha ha, let's do that. Yao Tianyu laughed after hearing it. In the Temple of Paragon, Lu Ming had been practicing the 6-word spear formula. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. My spear is still not stable enough. I didn't have any foundation in spear techniques before, so it took me too long to cultivate. Lu Ming sighed. Also, although this spear is a high-grade level 2 spiritual weapon, the body of the spear is still not soft enough. Looks like I'll have to buy a new spear in the future. Lu Ming thought as he looked at the spear in his hand. A long spear was mainly divided into a spearhead and a spear shaft. However, the most important thing was still the spear shaft. The spear shaft needed both hardness and softness. It had to be hard and heavy, but also had to have a certain degree of softness and elasticity. This was the only way to display the true power of the spear art. Zhu Bing's long spear was called the fire-patterned spear. The spear shaft was made from fire-patterned iron, and the spear tip was made from black iron essence. It was considered pretty good as a high-grade spirit weapon, but Lu Ming was not satisfied. Although the fire-patterned iron had a certain degree of elasticity, it was not enough. At this moment, Lu Ming's expression changed. He discovered that there was a clamor coming from outside. With a thought, Lu Ming left the Temple of Paragon, opened the door and walked out. In the courtyard, a group of people walked in. Hua Qi was among them, but at this time, his face was bruised and swollen. He was carrying a person in with the others. Be careful, you guys, be careful. Hua Qi shouted. Lu Ming frowned slightly. He walked forward and asked, Hua Qi, what's going on? Also, who injured you? Lu Ming, you're back. Seeing Lu Ming, Hua Qi was slightly stunned. Then, he averted his gaze and said, I'm fine. I just accidentally fell while doing a mission. You fell? Lu Ming's eyes flashed. Then, he looked at the person being carried in by the crowd. With one look, his eyes suddenly narrowed. This person was none other than Pang Shi. At this moment, Pang Shi's face was pale and his eyes were tightly shut. He had already fainted. What happened? Lu Ming's face darkened. There was a moment of silence. No one spoke. Lu Ming's face darkened as he searched Pang Shi's body. The more he searched, the more gloomy Lu Ming's face became. Both of his legs were broken into several pieces. Both of his arms were broken, and 3 of his ribs were broken. More seriously, his internal organs were also damaged. This was obviously caused by a heavy blow. What a ruthless method. With such serious injuries, if he was not careful, it would affect his future martial arts path. In more serious cases, he might even be crippled. Tell me what happened. Lu Ming's voice was extremely cold. Lu Ming, it's really nothing. It's all our fault. Hua Qi gritted his teeth and said, how did you do it? Lu Ming continued to ask. Hua Qi, don't hide it. If you don't say it, I will. At this moment, another young man shouted. This young man was called Lu Qi. In fact, Lu Ming had an impression of these young men. They were all new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard this year. Lu Qi, you can't say it. Hua Qi shouted. Hua Qi, shut up. Lu Ming shouted. Then, he looked at Lu Qi and said, say it. Lu Qi gritted his teeth and said, Senior brother Lu Ming, Pang Shi was beaten up by someone from the Star Moon Alliance. Star Moon Alliance? Lu Ming frowned. He had never heard of this Star Moon Alliance. Senior brother Lu Ming, the Star Moon Alliance is a force formed by some disciples of the Azure Dragon Courtyard. They built a Star Moon Pavilion in the trading point to buy materials and items from disciples. The price is slightly higher than exchanging them directly with contribution points. Lu Qi explained. Lu Ming nodded. The trading point was located in the central area of the 4 courtyards. It was the place where disciples of the 4 courtyards traded. Although it was convenient to exchange at the contribution hall, the exchange price was relatively lower. Therefore, many disciples who went out to complete missions and obtain materials for refining elixirs or weapons would choose to trade at the exchange point. It was more cost-effective that way. Lu Qi continued. During this period of time, Pang Shi went out with us to do missions. We also obtained some materials and brought them to the Star Moon Pavilion to sell. Who knew that the Star Moon Pavilion was despicable, and only gave us 1 silver tael for 1,000 silver taels. Pang Shi was furious and argued with them. Then he was beaten up like this. Even we were beaten up. Yes, the most despicable thing is that they only targeted our Vermilion Bird Courtyard. The other courtyards were all fair trade. Another young man roared. I see. They only targeted the Vermilion Bird Courtyard? Lu Ming muttered. At this moment he had calmed down. However, the cold light in his eyes was incomparably cold. When the other young men looked at him, they couldn't help but shiver. Hua Qi, quickly invite the alchemists from the sect. No matter how much money I have to spend, I have to save Pang Shi. Lu Ming said coldly. I have already asked someone to invite them. They will be here soon. Hua Qi said. That's good. I will leave Pang Shi in your care for now. As soon as he finished speaking, Lu Ming turned and walked out. Lu Ming, you can't. The Star Moon Pavilion is filled with experts. You are not their match. You will be courting death if you go. Hua Qi shouted. If I don't go, I won't be at ease. Lu Ming only left this sentence and strode away. Although Lu Ming and Pang Shi had only known each other for a few months, Pang Shi's character was straightforward and honest. This hunter's son had already received Lu Ming's approval. Lu Ming treated him as a friend and even a brother. Now that Pang Shi was beaten up like this, it was impossible for him to ignore it. Although he felt that this matter was very strange and could be a trap. But so what? There were things that a man should do and not do. Chapter 77. Looking at Lu Ming's departing figure, Hua Qi's face flashed with anxiety as he thought to himself, no, if Lu Ming goes like this, he will definitely be at a disadvantage. Furthermore, I heard that the backer of the Star Moon Pavilion is the genius of the bronze list, Yao Qianyu. No matter how strong Lu Ming is, he won't be a match for him. I'm going to look for Feng Wu and get her to look for Elder Mulans. Otherwise, Lu Ming will be in danger. Immediately, Hua Qi gave a few instructions to the others before hurriedly heading outside. Speaking of the Star Moon Pavilion, there was probably no one in the entire trading area who didn't know of it. This was because the backer of the Star Moon Pavilion was the genius on the bronze list, Yao Qianyu. Therefore, the strength of the Star Moon Pavilion was one of the top in the entire trading area. This was because the silver-ranked disciples would not interfere in such an ordinary trading area. They had a higher-level place. The Star Moon Pavilion was a 3-story building that occupied an extremely large area. Lu Wei was a small leader of the Star Moon Pavilion. He had joined the Star Moon Pavilion for more than a year. As he was quick-witted, good at management and ruthless, he had become a small leader in just over a year. At this moment, in front of the entrance of the Star Moon Pavilion, he was lazily sitting on an armchair, looking ahead. This was because there were still some people surrounding the front of the Star Moon Pavilion. These people were all new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard. These people were the same as Pang Shi and the rest. They had all been scammed by the Star Moon Pavilion. At this moment they were all glaring at Lu Wei, but they did not dare to say anything. This was because they had just seen one of the disciples being beaten to a miserable state by the Star Moon Alliance. He was almost beaten to death. Lu Wei held a cup of tea and slowly drank it. Looking at the newcomers below who were angry but did not dare to say anything, he felt a wave of satisfaction in his heart. Damn it, my materials are worth 3,000 taels of silver, but they only gave me 3 taels of silver. What's the difference between this and robbery? The disciples clenched their fists and roared in their hearts. What are you looking at? Are you asking for a beating? Hurry up and scram. Lu Wei berated condescendingly. Return the materials to me and I'll leave. Finally, a thin youth around 15 years old could not help but call out, "Oh my, you dare to ask for the materials back? Are you dreaming? Get this straight, we've already bought your materials and given you the money. This is a fair trade, do you understand?" Before Lu Wei could say anything, a big-mouthed minion jumped out from beside him and shouted loudly. After he finished scolding, he secretly glanced at Lu Wei. Seeing Lu Wei secretly nodding, he was overjoyed. It seemed that Lu Wei was very satisfied with his performance. Below, the skinny youth's face was flushed red. He clenched his fists and said, "Fair? My materials are worth more than 5,000 taels of silver, but you are only giving me 5 taels of silver. I risked my life to get them. You can't do this to me." "Oh my, you still dare to talk back? I think your bones must be itching. Do you want to be like that big guy from before and have all of your bones broken? That guy was personally dealt with by our alliance master. Now I'll do the same." The big-mouthed minion sneered and walked down step by step. The skinny young man gritted his teeth and decided to throw caution to the wind. He shouted, "What you're doing is against the rules of the sect. I'm going to the law enforcement hall to complain about you." "Oh, you want to lodge a complaint against us in the law enforcement hall? I think your bones are really itching." The big-mouthed minion's face was gloomy as he walked towards the skinny youth step by step. The skinny youth's face was pale with fright. Around them, the other new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard gritted their teeth, but none of them dared to say a word. Further away, many disciples of the other courtyards were watching the show with great interest. It was as if they were watching a good show. "Don't come over." The skinny youth roared and struck out with his palm. However, he was only at the 9th level of the martial warrior realm, while the big-mouthed minion was an old disciple who had reached the 3rd level of the martial master realm. He was not a match for him at all. With one move, the skinny youth was hit until he vomited blood and retreated again and again. However, the big-mouthed minion quickly caught up and grabbed the skinny youth's neck. "You still dare to attack? You're looking for a beating," the big-mouthed minion coldly shouted. Then, he raised his other hand high and suddenly slapped the skinny youth's face. "He's going to be miserable." The new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard sighed. They couldn't bear to watch and closed their eyes. However, the slap that they imagined did not sound and the scene fell into silence. They curiously opened their eyes and saw that the big-mouthed minion's arm was held by someone. It was a youth of about 15 years old. He was about the same age as them, but he was wearing a blue robe and had a slender figure. Just by standing there, he gave off a feeling of being as immovable as a mountain. The skinny youth was already prepared to be beaten up, but he suddenly found that the big-mouthed minion's arm was held by someone. He turned his head around and saw a delicate and pretty face. However, that face was incomparably cold. "Senior brother Lu Ming." The skinny youth couldn't help but say such a sentence in his heart. "Who are you? You dare to block me? Are you courting death?" The big-mouthed minion shouted. "Me? I'm just a new disciple of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard," Lu Ming said indifferently. "A new disciple of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard?" Hearing that Lu Ming was just a new disciple of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard, the big-mouthed minion's courage was boosted and he roared. "A mere new disciple dares to grab my hand? Let go and then kneel down and kowtow to admit your mistake. Perhaps I can spare you. Is that so? The corners of Lu Ming's lips curled into a cold smile. Wire trash like you still staying here. As soon as his voice fell, Lu Ming's palm suddenly exerted force. Crack. The sound of bones breaking was heard. Then the big-mouthed minion's shrill scream was heard. My hand! My hand is broken! Let go of my hand! The big-mouthed minion screamed and the arm that was holding the skinny youth loosened. He desperately tried to pry Lu Ming's arm away. Let go of you? Sure. Lu Ming sneered. Then he raised one of his arms high and slapped it down hard. Slap. It was an extremely loud slap in the face. In the sound of the slap, the big-mouthed youth's body was like a broken garbage bag being swept up by the wind. He flew out close to the ground with a whoosh. Everyone could see that in the process of flying out, teeth mixed with blood were spat out from his mouth. The big-mouthed youth's face directly collapsed and deformed. Bang! The big-mouthed minion fell heavily on the wall next to the stairs. He screamed and fainted. Cool! Cool! The new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard all roared in their hearts. This slap was too cool. It was too satisfying. The big-mouthed minion was arrogant and despotic just a moment ago, but now he was beaten into such a miserable state. It was too satisfying. It was simply too satisfying. They wished they could transform into Lu Ming and ruthlessly slap the big-mouthed youth a few times. Chapter 78. Where did this bastard come from? Did you eat a leopard's guts? How dare you hit someone from the Star Moon League? If I don't cripple you today, I will change my surname to yours. A dark-skinned young man walked out. His body was majestic and his muscles bulged like black iron. His eyes were cold as he stared at Lu Ming with murderous intent. Bang! He suddenly jumped up from the top of the stairs. While he was in the air, his body flashed with a bloody light and a huge black bear appeared. There were 2 bloody chakras on the black bear's body. The cultivation of the 4th-level martial master and the eruption of the black bear's bloodline made the burly young man's aura even stronger. He was like a mountain that pressed down on Lu Ming. This burly young man was several times stronger than the blabbermouth young man. Above, Lu Wei and the others sneered. They believed that the burly young man would definitely make Lu Ming suffer a great loss. How strong could a new disciple be? But in the next moment, the smile on their faces froze. Slap. It was still a loud slap. Then, the crowd saw the imposing young man fly back at a speed even faster than when he had pounced. His face was deformed and blood mixed with teeth flew everywhere. His body fell heavily on the ground and he screamed. He followed in the footsteps of the blabbermouth young man and fainted. His Lu Wei and the others from the Star Moon League couldn't help but gasp. At this moment, even if they were arrogant, they could tell that Lu Ming was an expert. But when did the Vermilion Bird Courtyard have such a powerful new disciple? Could it be? Lu Wei's face changed. He slowly stood up from the chair and asked, Tell me, who are you? Senior brother Lu Ming. Senior brother Lu Ming, good job. At this moment, the skinny young man shouted excitedly. Just now, although the new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard saw Lu Ming, everything happened too fast and they didn't have time to call out Lu Ming's name. Lu Ming? Newcomer King Lu Ming? On the stairs, the faces of the other people from the Star Moon League slightly changed. To some people, the title of the newcomer king held some weight, especially when Lu Ming had defeated Ning Feng more than 2 months ago. So it was him? Not far away, the other old disciples of the 4 courtyards suddenly understood. It was no wonder that among this year's newcomers, only Lu Ming had the ability and guts to send 2 people from the Star Moon Alliance flying in front of the Star Moon Alliance. Lu Ming, it's you? But let me tell you, even though you're the newcomer king, you're still too inexperienced to cause trouble in the Star Moon Alliance. Lu Wei's eyes flashed. There was a cold smile at the corners of Lu Ming's lips. Step by step, he climbed up the stairs and walked toward Lu Wei and the rest. Lu Ming, do you really dare to go against my Star Moon League? Think carefully. My Star Moon League's leader, Chen Yueshing, is an expert who is about to reach the Martial Master realm. Moreover, I don't mind telling you that behind the leader is senior brother Yao Tianyu, who is on the bronze list. If you dare to act recklessly, you will be consigned to eternal damnation. Lu Wei yelled with an ugly expression. Lu Ming's figure paused and his footsteps came to a halt. Yao Tianyu. It really is Yao Tianyu. Lu Ming's eyes flashed with shocking killing intent. At this moment, on the third floor of the Star Moon Pavilion, a few youths were observing below. One of them wore a long robe with stars and moons. This person was the leader of the Star Moon League, Chen Yueshing. Leader, are you not going to make a move now? One of the youths asked. There is no need for us to make a move. Let Lu Ming do as he pleases. Lu Wei and the rest of the trash will be beaten up and it will be worth it. Senior brother Yao Tianyu will lead the people from the disciplinary hall here. At that time we can take down Lu Ming. Chen Yueshing smiled faintly. In his eyes, Lu Wei and the rest were just pawns that could be used. Leader, you are wise. The other youths took the opportunity to flatter him. Below, when Lu Wei saw that Lu Ming had stopped, he thought that Lu Ming was afraid of Yao Tianyu's reputation. He immediately revealed a smug expression and shouted, Lu Ming, you have slapped 2 people from the Star Moon League. This is equivalent to smashing the reputation of the Star Moon League. This is a serious crime. How about this, take out 2,000 contribution points, no 5,000 contribution points as medical fees and an apology in public. If so, I will consider letting you off. Is that so? You are really confident. Lu Ming took one step at a time and continued walking forward. Lu Wei's expression changed again and he shouted, Lu Ming, what are you trying to do? I am warning you, stop right now. However, Lu Ming had no intention of stopping. He continued to walk towards Lu Wei step by step. Lu Wei's face began to break out in cold sweat. He suddenly roared, go together and cripple him. Whoosh! Whoosh! Suddenly, a dozen youths behind Lu Wei rushed forward. Rays of bloody light flashed. These youths did not hesitate to use bloodline eruption. Get the hell back! Lu Ming waved his hand and slapped out. Immediately, a series of loud and dense slaps rang out in the air. The members of the Star Moon League who had rushed over were sent flying back at a speed faster than when they came. All of them screamed and fell to the ground. Blood mixed with teeth sprayed all over the ground. Lu Ming had only waved one hand from beginning to end. It was as if he was swatting away flies, sending the members of the Star Moon League flying. As a series of gasps rang out. As long as the disciples of the 4 courtyards saw this scene, they were all dumbfounded. Especially the new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard. They were all trembling with excitement. So strong, Lu Ming has become stronger again. This is a genius, a true super genius. The Black Sword sect only sees him once every few years. Some of the older disciples said with complicated expressions. All of a sudden, only Lu Wei was left at the entrance of the Star Moon Pavilion. His face was pale with fright as he stared at Lu Ming with a trembling body. Lu Ming, I'm warning you, don't mess around. Lu Wei said with a trembling voice. But Lu Ming did not look at him. Instead, he raised his head to look at the entire Star Moon Pavilion and whispered, there's no need for the Star Moon Pavilion to exist anymore. Boom! Then Lu Ming threw a punch at a pillar beside him. Boom! This pillar was made of extremely hard black ironwood. However, under Lu Ming's punch, it exploded with a loud bang. Wood shavings flew all over the place. Bang! Then, Lu Ming moved and attacked another pillar. With the same explosion, this pillar was smashed into pieces. Crack! 2 pillars were smashed into pieces consecutively. The entire Star Moon Pavilion started to shake a little, emitting cracking sounds. Lu Ming, are you crazy? What are you doing? Stop it! Stop it! Lu Wei's face turned pale as he screamed crazily and cried out. At this time on the 3rd floor, Chen Yueshing could no longer remain calm and shouted crazily, damn it, what is this guy trying to do? However, Lu Ming did not have the slightest intention of stopping. With a sword cry, he unsheathed his sword and slashed out a few sword chi towards the pillars at the side of the Star Moon Pavilion. Chapter 79. The Star Moon Pavilion had a total of 8 pillars. At this moment, 6 of them had been broken by Lu Ming, leaving only 2 behind. Even with the walls on both sides, the Star Moon Pavilion began to shake violently, emitting cracking sounds. Lu Ming, you deserve to die, you deserve to die. A furious roar came from the 3rd floor, followed by a few figures jumping down. It's Chun Yueshing, the Star Moon Alliance's leader. Chun Yueshing has finally come out, someone shouted. At this moment, Chun Yueshing's face was twisted as he glared at Lu Ming and shouted, "Lu Ming, you dare to destroy my Star Moon Pavilion. Today I will break your bones one by one, and break your meridians one by one, turning you into a cripple worse than a pig or a dog." Lu Ming's methods were completely out of his expectations. He originally thought that no matter how strong Lu Ming was, it would take some effort to defeat Lu Wei and the others. At that time, Yao Qianyu would have already arrived with the people from the disciplinary hall. However, he never expected that Lu Ming's strength would far exceed his expectations. At the same time, his methods were ruthless and his guts were also out of his expectations. Lu Ming actually wanted to tear down the Star Moon Pavilion. This was his painstaking effort, so he had no choice but to appear. Lu Ming did not say anything, only coldly looking at Chun Yueshing. "Lu Ming, I don't mind telling you that I broke all the bones of your friend Peng Shi. Now, I'll let you accompany your friend." Chun Yueshing's face was twisted, flickering with shocking killing intent. The aura from his body was as heavy as a mountain. Late-stage martial master realm. This was Chun Yueshing's strength. He was extremely powerful, many times stronger than Ningfeng. Otherwise, he would not have been able to open the Star Moon Pavilion and control the Star Moon Alliance. At the bottom of the stairs, the new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard were pressured by this aura. Their faces turned pale as they retreated. "Lu Ming, I admit that you're very strong. But it's still too early for you to challenge me. Today, I'll teach you the principles of life for free. That is, you must keep a low profile. When you meet someone you can't defeat, you must tuck your tail between your legs." Boom! As he spoke, Chun Yueshing's aura surged once again. Chun Yueshing's bloodline was at the 4th rank. At this moment, Chun Yueshing's strength had reached the extreme, directly reaching the limit of the 8th level martial master. Lightning Claw. Whoosh! Chun Yueshing stomped on the ground. With a swoosh, he arrived in front of Lu Ming. The razor-sharp claws crazily clawed at Lu Ming. In an instant, at least 20 claw attacks were launched. But Lu Ming was even faster. Sword cries rang out, and in an instant dozens of sword lights bloomed from Lu Ming's hands, incomparably dazzling. Chi-chi, the sword chi whistled, the claw force swept out, and gusts of strong wind gushed out in all directions. The nearby new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard retreated again and again. Bang! Bang! Some of the forces shot out and struck the walls of the Star Moon Tower, causing the Star Moon Tower to shake even more violently. Ah! Suddenly, there was a scream as a figure retreated. It was Chun Yueshing. There was a deep sword wound on his shoulder, almost chopping off his arm. The spectators were all shocked beyond words. In less than 10 moves, Chun Yueshing was defeated and forced to retreat with serious injuries. "Attack!" Chun Yueshing roared. At this moment he felt his heart twitching. He was afraid. Whoosh! Whoosh! The few young men who were with him rushed toward Lu Ming. Chun Yueshing himself was running wildly to the side. He wanted to run away. "Chun Yueshing, don't even think about running." Lu Ming roared and the sword light burst out, peerlessly sharp. Whoosh! Whoosh! The few young men were instantly sent flying far away, crashing heavily into the walls of the Star Moon Tower. Rumble! At this moment, the Star Moon Tower could no longer withstand it, and collapsed with a rumble. "Retreat quickly!" Some of the disciples of the 4 courtyards who were closer to it turned pale with fright and quickly retreated. Rumble! The entire Star Moon Tower collapsed, stirring up dust in the air. Lu Ming's figure was as fast as lightning as he rushed toward Chun Yueshing. Chun Yueshing was seriously injured and his speed was greatly reduced. In a few breaths, Lu Ming caught up with him. "Lu Ming, wait a minute. Everything can be discussed. What do you want? I can give it to you." Seeing that he couldn't escape, Chun Yueshing stopped and begged. At the same time, he wanted to use benefits to keep Lu Ming in check. At the same time, he kept thinking, soon senior brother Yao Qianyu and the rest will be here soon. When senior brother Yao Qianyu and the rest arrive, Lu Ming, let's see how you're going to die. I want revenge 10 times or 100 times more. What do I want? The cold smile at the corners of Lu Ming's lips deepened. He said, what I want is very simple. Everything that you used on my brother, Pang Shi, will be used on you in double. Boom! He threw a punch and landed heavily on Chen Yuexing's stomach. With a crack, several of Chen Yuexing's ribs were broken. His body flew out heavily and he coughed up large mouthfuls of blood. Next, it's your limbs. Lu Ming's eyes were cold as he walked step by step to Chen Yuexing's side. No, don't! Chen Yuexing shouted. Stop! At this moment, a furious roar suddenly came from afar. At the same time, whoosh! Whoosh! One by one, silhouettes rushed over. It's the law enforcement hall. They're from the law enforcement hall. The leader is Yao Tianyu. It's over. This time Lu Ming is finished. The surrounding senior disciples exclaimed when they saw these people rushing over. Of course, some were surprised, a few were worried, but most were gloating. The law enforcement hall was jointly established by the 4 major courts. Each court would elect some people to join the law enforcement hall to maintain order in the Mystic Essence Sword sect. Senior brother Lu Ming, the people from the law enforcement hall are here. Let's go. The skinny young man who was saved by Lu Ming shouted. Ha ha ha, the people from the law enforcement hall are here. Senior brother Yao Tianyu is here. Lu Ming, you're finished. How dare you break my ribs? I'll return it to you 10-fold or 100-fold. Chen Yuexing regained his arrogance and shouted coldly when the people from the law enforcement hall arrived. Law enforcement hall? Hee, no one can save you today. Lu Ming's eyes were still cold. He was not moved at all. He lifted his foot and stomped heavily on Chen Yuexing's leg. The arrogance on Chen Yuexing's face disappeared and was replaced by endless fear. He wailed, no, don't, crack. Lu Ming's foot stomped heavily. One of Chen Yuexing's leg bones was broken into several pieces by Lu Ming's true qi. Ah, my leg. Senior brother Yao, save me. Chen Yuexing wailed. Bang! Bang! Lu Ming's legs were as fast as lightning as he stomped on the ground twice. These 2 feet were stepping on Chen Yuexing's other leg and one of his arms. Immediately, Chen Yuexing's leg and arm bones were broken into several pieces. Chapter 80. I told you to stop. Didn't you hear me? The leader was about 17 years old. He was as still as a mountain and his aura was oppressive. His eyes were filled with killing intent like a wolf or tiger. It's really Yao Tianyu. He came personally. Low exclamations could be heard all around. Lu Ming raised his eyebrows. So this youth was Yao Tianyu. His expression was still calm as he said indifferently, I heard you, but why should I stop? How dare you talk to senior brother Yao like that? Lu Ming, what's with your attitude? As soon as Lu Ming finished speaking, a few youths from the tribunal council shouted. Lu Ming pursed his lips and could not be bothered with them. Lu Ming, you attacked a fellow disciple for no reason and your methods are vicious. You've gone mad and seriously violated the sect rules. Now, bind yourself in chains and follow us back to the tribunal council to receive your punishment. A red-robed youth walked out and shouted loudly. Then with a clang, he threw a thick chain in front of Lu Ming. That's right. Lu Ming, quickly surrender and await your punishment. The other youths from the tribunal council shouted as well. I violated the sect rules? Lu Ming sneered and said. Then why didn't you ask me why I attacked? There's no need to ask. Anyway, we saw you seriously injure your fellow disciple and destroy the Star Moon Pavilion. This is a serious crime. The red-robed youth directly concluded. Aha, let me tell you now. I'm not guilty. I'm just punishing the sect's vermin. The Star Moon Pavilion used an extremely low price to forcefully buy the materials of new disciples. Once they disobeyed, they would be heavy-handed. One of my friends is still unconscious. Why didn't you investigate this? Lu Ming said coldly. Nonsense. He's slandering me. There's no such thing. Senior brother Yao, you have to uphold justice for me. Chen Yuexing's cultivation was profound and he did not faint. At this moment, he shouted for his innocence. Slandering? Do you think everyone else is blind? Lu Ming said. Oh. The red-robed youth turned his gaze to the youths from the Vermilion Bird Courtyard and said, Did any of you see the Star Moon Pavilion forcefully buy materials? And he even injured someone? But let me warn you. Before you speak, it's best to think carefully. Don't talk nonsense. Be careful of the trouble that comes from the mouth. This was a blatant threat. The new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard originally wanted to tell the truth, but when they heard this, their expressions all changed. As for Yao Tianyu, although he didn't say anything, his aura was oppressive. He casually glanced over, causing the faces of the disciples to turn even uglier. For a moment no one dared to speak. Yao Tianyu sneered, and the other disciples of the enforcement hall also sneered. The red-robed youth said, "Lu Ming, it seems that no one will testify for you. Now what else do you have to say? Why aren't you surrendering?" Lu Ming sneered. His gaze swept over the new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard. As soon as those disciples saw Lu Ming's gaze, their faces turned red and they lowered their heads in shame. However, no one said anything. "Lu Ming, what are you looking at? Was he trying to threaten them? With the law enforcement hall here, don't even think about it. Why aren't you surrendering? Was he trying to resist? Brothers, get ready to attack." The red-robed youth shouted, and a ruthless light flashed in his eyes. A few days ago, he had gone to summon Lu Ming and was kicked out by Lu Ming, which was a great humiliation to him. Enforcement hall? What bullshit enforcement hall? I've learned something today. If you want to attack, then attack. You want me to surrendering? Impossible. I, Lu Ming, am not afraid of a fight. Lu Ming held a long sword in his hand and stood there proudly. His slender figure was like a tall and straight mountain peak, full of unyielding and unswerving determination. Before he came here today, he had already guessed that this was Yao Tianyu's doing. Although he knew that with his current cultivation, he had no chance of winning against someone on the bronze list, he still came. But he still came and did it. This was his original intention. If he wanted to do something, he would do it. At worst, he would fight a bloody battle. Looking at Lu Ming's figure, the new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard felt even more ashamed. Wait a minute. Suddenly a voice was heard. The skinny youth who was saved by Lu Ming walked out with his fists clenched. His face was red, and his body was trembling. "I can testify that what senior brother Lu Ming said is the truth. The Star Moon Pavilion forced us to buy the materials of the new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard. They only gave us 1 silver tael for 1,000 taels of silver. If we didn't comply, we would be beaten up. Previously, there was a senior brother who didn't comply. After a few words, Chen Yueshing broke his bones and knocked him unconscious. Senior brother Lu Ming did it for us. He didn't violate any rules." "Don't," the skinny youth shouted, and his voice spread far and wide. "Shut up. How dare you?" The red-robed youth suddenly shouted, interrupting the skinny youth's words. Then he stared coldly at the skinny youth and said in a deep voice, "Kid, how dare you? I can see that you are Lu Ming's accomplice. You actually helped Lu Ming to bring disaster to the courtyard. You even wanted to deceive the tribunal council. Your crime is unforgivable. Today you are with Lu Ming. You can't escape punishment." The skinny youth's face suddenly turned pale. His voice trembled as he said, "No, you can't do this. I am telling the truth. No need to talk nonsense. Attack." At this moment Yao Tianyu finally spoke. He was decisive and direct. "Junior brother, please step back." Lu Ming waved his palm. True qi gushed out, and the skinny youth retreated into the crowd. Lu Ming faced the people from the law enforcement hall alone. He didn't say anything, but the unyielding battle intent on his body said it all. Fight to the end. Attack together. Take down Lu Ming. It's fine as long as you don't kill him." The red-robed youth shouted. Swish. Swish. At this moment, more than a dozen young men from the tribunal council rushed toward Lu Ming. Sword chi, palm wind, fist force instantly enveloped Lu Ming's body. These disciples of the tribunal council were all very strong. The weakest among them was at the 6th level of the martial master realm. Ultimate flowing light. Clang. With a sword cry, sword light burst out and sword chi burst out. Lu Ming directly killed his way into the crowd. Clang. Clang. Boom. Boom. The sounds of collisions and explosions rang out intensely. Then a few figures retreated. They were the disciples of the tribunal council. They had been stabbed in the chest and the wounds went straight to the bones. They fell heavily to the ground and coughed up blood. The disciples of the 4 courtyards were shocked. Lu Ming was too strong. Not only did he fight with the tribunal council, But he also injured several experts of the Tribunal Council. Strong, too strong. There were many experts at the 8th level of the Martial Master realm in the Tribunal Council. Attack together, attack together. The red-robed youth shouted from the side. Swish, swish. More disciples of the Tribunal Council rushed toward Lu Ming. This time, there were more than 30 disciples of the Tribunal Council. Kill! Lu Ming hollered, his aura soaring. Chapter 81. However, he was surrounded by nearly 30 disciples of the Law Enforcement Hall. In an instant, all kinds of attacks were launched at Lu Ming. There was no way to dodge. Bloodline eruption. Lu Ming didn't hesitate at all and directly unleashed his bloodline. Bloodline eruption increased Lu Ming's combat strength by a large margin. He ignored most of the attacks and only needed to avoid the physical attacks of the long swords and sabers. Boom! 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 Streaks of sword chi, saber energy, and fist force all hit Lu Ming, but Lu Ming's body only shook slightly. Then he kept slashing with the Heavenly Star Sword. The flowing light sword was extremely fast. He slashed dozens of times in an instant. Ah! Ah! Screams were heard continuously. 7 or 8 figures were sent flying and fell to the ground with serious injuries. Kill! Lu Ming was in a frenzy. The genuine chi in his body was so condensed that it burst out continuously. His bloodline was now at level 4, and he could only unleash his bloodline for 5 breaths. In these 5 breaths he was extremely powerful. Whoosh! Whoosh! The Heavenly Star Sword kept slashing out. Screams were heard as one figure after another was sent flying. Bang! Bang! The disciples of the Law Enforcement Hall fell to the ground one after another like sandbags. The disciples of the 4 courtyards who were watching were so shocked that their eyeballs almost popped out. Monster, Lu Ming is too strong. How long has he been in this sect? Did you see that? He actually ignored the attacks. He must have a defensive treasure on him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to withstand so many attacks. Yes, he must have a defensive treasure. Lu Ming is actually not that strong. He relied on a defensive treasure to catch the Law Enforcement Hall disciples off guard. Look, he's injured. The senior disciples of the 4 courtyards discussed animatedly. Although they felt that Lu Ming should have relied on a defensive treasure, their eyes were still flashing with shock. Poochie! At this moment Lu Ming spat out a mouthful of blood. After 5 breaths, more than 20 Law Enforcement Hall disciples had been seriously injured by him and couldn't fight anymore. However, he had taken so many attacks. Although he had absorbed 50% of the attacks, he was still injured. He's injured, kill him. The remaining Law Enforcement Hall disciples roared and continued to rush towards Lu Ming. Clang! A tall and thin young man exchanged a blow with Lu Ming. Lu Ming's body trembled, and he couldn't help but take a step back. 9th layer Martial Master. In the Law Enforcement Hall, a 9th level Martial Master finally made a move. As soon as Lu Ming retreated, the others rushed forward one after another. During this entire process, Yao Tianyu had no intention of making a move. He continued to stand at the side and watch coldly. It seemed that Lu Ming was not worthy of him personally taking action. Beside Yao Tianyu there was another young man. His body was extremely muscular like an iron tower. He did not make a move either. So what if you are at the 9th level of the Martial Master realm? Kill! Lu Ming attacked more than 10 times in a row, forcing the others to retreat. Then, he fought with the 9th level Martial Master expert. In an instant, the two of them exchanged more than 10 moves. Tongue! Tongue! After a dozen or so moves, the young man's expression changed greatly and he retreated a dozen or so steps. Whoosh! Lu Ming took a step forward and charged towards the red-robed youth. Now it's your turn. Lu Ming's eyes were ice-cold as killing intent flashed. The red-robed youth was scared out of his wits. So many Law Enforcement Hall experts were actually unable to stop Lu Ming. How was this possible? He couldn't help but shout, "Senior brother Yao, save me." Yao Tianyu frowned and silently said, "He Tai, make a move." Yes. The young man behind him, who was like an iron tower, responded. Then he suddenly stomped his feet on the ground. Boom! The ground shook and the hard floor cracked. The Iron Tower youth's body shot out like a cannonball. Fast, incomparably fast. It was even faster than Lu Ming's dragon snake steps. In an instant he arrived near Lu Ming. With a punch, a ferocious and berserk fist energy crazily rushed towards Lu Ming. So strong. Lu Ming's heart trembled. This Iron Tower youth's punch gave him an extremely dangerous feeling. Without hesitation, he erupted with all his true chi and slashed at the Iron Tower youth. Boom! The Iron Tower youth's fist landed heavily on the heavenly star sword. In that instant Lu Ming felt as if he had been hit by a mountain. This force was irresistible. Lu Ming's body shook violently as he was sent flying. After flying for more than 10 meters, Lu Ming finally landed on the ground. Following which, Lu Ming took 8 consecutive steps back. With every step, the floor would emit a roar and crack. After 8 steps, Lu Ming stopped and spat out a mouthful of blood. He Tai has made a move. He Tai is a genius who won 8 consecutive matches on the bronze platform. He is not far from the bronze list. With him making a move, Lu Ming is doomed. That's right. Lu Ming and He Tai are too far apart. Seeing the Iron Tower youth make a move, someone exclaimed in shock. 8 consecutive matches on the bronze platform? Strong indeed. Lu Ming looked at He Tai in front of him with a grave expression. If a disciple of the Mystic Essence Sword sect wanted to enter the bronze list, they had to go on the bronze platform and accept challenges. Only those who won 10 consecutive matches could enter the bronze list. As for He Tai, he had already won 8 consecutive matches. If he won 2 more matches, he would be able to enter the bronze list. Of course, it wouldn't be that easy. The further one went, the harder it would be. The opponents would also be stronger. But 8 consecutive matches was already very strong. You can take a punch from me. Not bad. But I advise you to surrender. The difference between you and me is too great. He Tai said indifferently. Haha, if you want to fight, then let's fight. You want me to surrender? Impossible. Lu Ming wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and laughed. Stubborn. Boom. He Tai rushed towards Lu Ming and threw out another punch. This punch was even more powerful than the previous one. Lu Ming's pupils shrank. He did not take it head-on. Instead, he used the dragon snake steps and dodged to the side. You can't avoid it. He Tai took a heavy step and the floor cracked. He was like a wild beast as he rushed towards Lu Ming. Another punch was thrown out. It was incomparably fast. This punch could not be avoided. If he could not avoid it, then he would take it head-on. Lu Ming circulated the true dragon battle art to the extreme. True chi surged as he slashed out with his sword. The heavenly star sword and He Tai's fist collided again. Boom! Lu Ming's sword chi was instantly destroyed. The difference was too great. They were not on the same level at all. He Tai's combat strength was too strong. Although he was also a 9th level martial master, an ordinary 9th level martial master was trash in front of him. He could defeat him with a single punch. With Lu Ming's current combat strength without activating his bloodline, he could fight with an ordinary 9th level martial master expert. But compared to He Tai, the difference was too great. Bang! Lu Ming was directly blasted backward. He slid continuously for tens of meters before coming to a stop. Puff! Puff! Lu Ming spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. His face was pale and his body staggered as if he could fall at any moment. Is this the strength of a true genius of the Mystic Essence Sword sect? It is indeed powerful. Chapter 82. During the newcomer trial, he had swept away the other geniuses and won the title of newcomer king. At that time, he felt that the other geniuses were only SOSO. Now that he thought about it, he was wrong. The other geniuses among the newcomers were not too weak, but too immature. They had not grown up yet. Perhaps in a few years some of them would grow very strong. Take him down. He Tai waved his hand and said. Lu Ming was already seriously injured, so there was no need for him to take action. Let's see how you resist now. The remaining dozen or so disciples of the law enforcement hall walked towards Lu Ming with a ferocious expression. Lu Ming had actually injured more than 20 of them. They were both afraid and hateful of Lu Ming. Haha. Lu Ming supported himself with his long sword. He glanced around and sneered again and again. Damn it, what are you laughing at? You'll see when you get to the law enforcement hall. A skinny young man smiled sinisterly and clawed at Lu Ming's head. He wanted to press Lu Ming's head to the ground and humiliate him. But whoosh! A sword light flashed and a few streams of blood spurted out. There were 5 fingers in the blood. The skinny young man looked at his bare palm in a daze and then let out a heart-wrenching scream. Ah, my fingers, Lu Ming, I want you dead. That sword attack just now was of course from Lu Ming. Go, let's attack together. The others roared. There were a total of 10 people, including a 9th-level martial master expert. One attack after another was directed at Lu Ming. Lu Ming barely raised his true qi and waved his sword to block. Clang! Clang! After a few consecutive moves, Lu Ming's body kept retreating. His body was hit by a sword and blood immediately flowed out. Lu Ming, get down and surrender. A young man from the law enforcement hall shouted. In your dreams. There were only 2 simple words in response. Then I'll beat you until you're down. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, one attack after another was directed at Lu Ming. These disciples of the law enforcement hall were all experts. Lu Ming, on the other hand, was severely injured. It was difficult for him to resist. After a few moves, more wounds appeared on his body, and blood flowed freely. Lu Ming's entire body was dyed red with blood. His footsteps were unsteady, as if he could collapse at any moment. However, he still stood tall and straight, and his gaze was still firm and persistent. At this moment the scene was silent. The air seemed to have frozen at this moment. No one spoke. They all stared blankly at that figure. Senior brother Lu Ming. The new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard all clenched their fists, their eyes red. Their eyes were filled with guilt. They felt guilty for not speaking up earlier. They all knew that the reason Lu Ming had come here and demolished the Star Moon Pavilion was to avenge Pang Shi. For a friend, for a brother to be able to do this was a true man, a true man. Compared to Lu Ming, they felt that they were too weak. Stop it! Stop it! The skinny young man roared and suddenly rushed forward. Slap! The red-robed young man suddenly rushed forward and sent the skinny young man flying with a slap. He said arrogantly, "Get lost. You'll see what happens later." Then, he looked at Lu Ming and laughed loudly. Lu Ming, weren't you very arrogant earlier? What's wrong? You can't do it anymore. Come and hit me, haha. Bang! As soon as the red-robed young man finished speaking, he received a heavy slap to the face. The slap was extremely loud and ruthless. The red-robed young man's body spun a few times before he stopped. One side of his face was almost smashed, and blood was spurting out of his teeth. He was beaten senseless and for a moment he even forgot to scream. He stared blankly at the person who hit him. It was a woman, an extremely seductive and sexy woman with an explosive figure. However, at this moment her expression was incomparably cold. Mullins! Mullins! A name flashed through the red-robed young man's mind. Mullins had finally arrived. No one could see how she arrived. Since you asked for a slap, I'll fulfill your wish, Mullins said coldly. Then she waved her hand again. Slap! Another slap. This time it landed directly on the other side of the red-robed young man's face. Blood was still spurting out of his mouth because he had lost all his teeth. The red-robed young man did not fly out. He was pulled by a force and spun a dozen times on the spot before he came to a stop. It was obvious how heavy the slap was. As soon as he stopped, he saw Mullins's cold face again. His heart skipped a beat and he almost wet himself. He shouted, "Don't laugh. Want." His mouth was leaking air and he could not even speak clearly. Get lost. Bang! Mullins kicked the red-robed young man more than 10 meters away. He screamed and fainted. Not far away, Yao Tianyu, who had been very calm, could no longer stay calm. He looked at Mullins with a grave expression. The people from the Tribunal Council did not dare to make a move. They looked at Mullins solemnly. Mullins did not look at the others. She walked to Lu Ming's side and asked with a concerned expression, "Are you okay?" "I'm fine. I won't die. I owe you another favor this time." Lu Ming smiled. "You can still laugh? Hurry up and take this pill." Mullins took out a pill and handed it to Lu Ming. Lu Ming did not stand on ceremony and swallowed it. The pill melted as soon as it entered his mouth. Then, it turned into a wave of energy that permeated Lu Ming's body. His wound quickly stopped bleeding and he was no longer bleeding. What a strong medicinal effect. This healing pill must be of a high grade. Mullins looked at Yao Tianyu and said coldly, "How dare you attack a disciple of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard? Elder Mullins." Yao Tianyu's expression was ugly. He cupped his fists and said, "Elder Mullins, we are enforcing the law impartially." Lu Ming relied on his high cultivation to injure dozens of people from the Star Moon Pavilion for no reason. He even destroyed the Star Moon Pavilion by force. Such an unruly and reckless person must be punished severely by the Tribunal Council. But Lu Ming is crazy. Not only did he resist arrest, but he also injured so many people from the Tribunal Council. Such a person, no matter what, he must be severely punished. Elder Mullins, as the head elder of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard, I hope you won't cover for him. Nonsense. The skinny young man's face was swollen after being slapped by the red-robed young man. He walked out and said, "It was clearly the Star Moon Pavilion who forcefully bought the materials of our Vermilion Bird Courtyard's new disciples. They even wantonly attacked people. Senior brother Lu Ming is fighting for justice for us. How is this against the rules?" That's right. Senior brother Lu Ming is fighting for justice for us. Several new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard walked out. With Mu Lan's arrival, their courage was boosted. They could no longer hold it in and told the truth. Nonsense. Yao Tianyu said in a low voice, "How could the Star Moon Pavilion do such a thing? If they did, the Tribunal Council would have punished them long ago. Moreover, you said that they forcefully bought a courtyard from the Vermilion Bird Courtyard. Does the Star Moon Pavilion have a grudge with the Vermilion Bird Courtyard?" Chapter 83. No, that's not it. We're speaking the truth. A few disciples from the Vermilion Bird Courtyard hurriedly explained. Enough. Mullins waved her hand and looked at Yao Tianyu. Now let me tell you clearly. I don't care who Lu Ming beat up or whose house he destroyed. I don't care. If I say that Lu Ming is innocent, he is innocent. If I say that he is innocent, he is innocent. How domineering. This is Mullins. When she's domineering, she doesn't talk reason at all. Yao Tianyu's face instantly turned red. He almost suffered internal injuries. Mullins didn't play by the rules. However, he couldn't do anything to Mullins. Elder Mullins, although you're an elder of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard and the granddaughter of Principal Yen, you can't bully others just because you're powerful. There are so many disciples here watching. Yao Tianyu finally said this after a long time. Yes, I'm bullying others. What's wrong with that? Mullins replied calmly. Yao Tianyu was so angry that his body trembled. All right. If that's the case, I'll report this to the elders of the disciplinary hall. Let's go. Mullins arrived in a domineering manner. Yao Tianyu knew that it was impossible to take down Lu Ming today. After saying this, he turned to leave. Who said that you can leave? Mullins's cold voice sounded. Yao Tianyu paused and looked at Mullins. He gritted his teeth and said, Elder Mullins, do you have any other instructions? You injured him and want to leave just like that? Aren't you being too lenient? Why don't you leave the medical fees behind? I think you'll need at least 1 or 2 million taels of silver to recover from such injuries. Mullins's gaze lingered on Lu Ming as she spoke slowly. Medical fees? 1 or 2 million taels of silver. All around, the onlookers were stunned. Some of them dug their ears hard, thinking that they had misheard. Even Lu Ming was in a daze. Mullins was asking for an exorbitant price. Sure enough, Yao Tianyu couldn't hold it in anymore and roared, medical fees? Mullins, don't go overboard. Lu Ming injured so many of us? I didn't even ask him for medical expenses, and you actually asked me for medical expenses? Impossible, let me tell you, impossible. The people who injured you, they deserve it. Let me tell you, if you don't pay the medical fees today, I don't mind breaking your bones one by one. Mullins said coldly. He was too domineering and overbearing. He didn't give Yao Tianyu any face at all. No, it wasn't that he didn't give Yao Tianyu any face, but that he didn't put him in his eyes at all. Yao Tianyu's expression was extremely ugly. Although he was a genius on the bronze list, he was still just a bronze disciple. If he were to fight with Mullins, he would definitely be slapped to death. His face alternated between green and white. If he were to give in today and pay the medical fees, he would lose all his face. Haha, niece Mullins, in my opinion, let's just let this matter rest. At this moment, a generous voice was heard. In the sky, a figure descended from the sky. It was an old man in his 60s. He wore a silver robe and had a kind smile on his face. It was a silver-robed elder. Seeing this old man, Yao Qianyu was overjoyed and shouted, "Elder Ming, you must seek justice for this disciple. Elder Mullins is too much." This silver-robed elder belonged to the Azure Dragon courtyard. Mullins's expression also darkened. She said, "Old Ming, I advise you not to meddle in other people's business." The surrounding people were dumbfounded. Mullins was too awesome. She called a silver-robed elder an old man? However, Elder Ming did not show any signs of anger. He was still smiling as he said, "I have already heard about the cause and effect of this matter. I think there is a big misunderstanding in this matter. In my opinion, the fault lies with the Star Moon Pavilion." The Star Moon Pavilion forcefully bought the disciples' materials. Lu Ming fought for justice and injured the disciple of the Star Moon Pavilion. As members of the disciplinary hall, Yao Qianyu and the rest naturally had to intervene when they saw Lu Ming injuring someone. That was why a fight broke out. This is a complete misunderstanding. Since both sides have people injured, I think we should just let this matter rest. Lu Ming's heart trembled. This was abandoning the rook to save the king. This elder Ming looked amiable, but he was actually a cunning old fox. In one sentence, he pushed all the blame to the Star Moon Pavilion. In this way, Yao Qianyu naturally did not need to pay the medical fees. Yao Qianyu and the rest would also have nothing to say to the disciplinary hall elder. Yao Qianyu's face darkened and he did not say anything. If this matter was really investigated, the fact that the Star Moon Pavilion forcefully bought the materials of the new disciples of the Vermilion Bird Courtyard would definitely not be concealed. Hence, it was good to push the blame to the Star Moon Pavilion. Mullins's eyes flashed slightly. This elder Ming was a silver-robed elder. If he was bent on protecting Yao Qianyu, there was nothing she could do. Oh, since it is the Star Moon Pavilion's fault, they must be severely punished. Otherwise, the disciples of the four courtyards will not be convinced. Mullins's eyes flashed and she smiled. Of course, the Star Moon Pavilion will definitely be severely punished. Moreover, all the materials will be returned. Elder Ming smiled and said to Yao Qianyu, "Qianyu, why aren't you bringing the disciples of the disciplinary hall back to treat their injuries?" "Yes." Yao Qianyu cupped his fists and instructed the disciples who were not injured to help the injured disciples back to treat their injuries. Lu Ming. Afterward, Yao Qianyu glanced at Lu Ming. His gaze was extremely cold. He then turned and left. "Yao Qianyu!" Lu Ming suddenly shouted. Yao Qianyu paused and turned around to look at Lu Ming coldly. Lu Ming stared at Yao Qianyu with bright eyes and said, "Yao Qianyu, you asked some underlings to besiege me. What kind of ability is that? If you have the ability, fight with me. I am challenging you now. Do you dare to accept the challenge?" As soon as he said that, the crowd suddenly fell into silence. Lu Ming actually dared to challenge Yao Qianyu? How could that be? How could he be Yao Tianyu's opponent? "You want to challenge me?" Yao Qianyu asked in return. "That's right." Lu Ming replied firmly. Yao Qianyu revealed a mocking smile and said disdainfully, "Lu Ming, I am a disciple on the bronze roll. What right do you have to challenge me? Wait until you become a disciple on the bronze roll before you challenge me. Now you are not qualified." Yao Tianyu's eyes were full of arrogance and disdain. After saying that, he turned and left. Lu Ming's eyes narrowed. "Disdain to accept my challenge?" Lu Ming couldn't help but clench his fists. "Lu Ming, don't think too much. This is the rule of the Mystic Essence Sword sect. If you want to challenge a disciple on the bronze roll, you must also be on the bronze roll. Otherwise, you don't have the right to challenge." Mullins explained to Lu Ming. "I see," Lu Ming muttered. However, Yao Qianyu's arrogant and disdainful eyes just now lingered in Lu Ming's mind. "Bronze roll? I will reach it soon. Yao Qianyu, just you wait." Lu Ming clenched his fists and his eyes were firm. "Lu Ming, are you okay? Lu Ming, are you okay?"